Hello, Thom Singer, and welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. Good to be with you.
Oh, it is fantastic. I'm looking forward to this very much. The problem we're going to have on this is as I was sort of going over your stuff and reviewing, you've done so many interesting things that I'm going to be very disjointed in wanting to talk about all of them. But to start with the area of focus, for people who are unfamiliar with you, could you just give us a quick 1 minute sort of who you are and what you do overview?
Absolutely. And it is true. If you were to look at my resume, I have a pretty eclectic background. I like to call it a very interesting journey. But from 2009 forward until the pandemic, I made my living doing one thing, and that was as a professional speaker, speaking at corporate and association events on the topic of sort of human interaction and why, as the world gets more into technology, we have to pay more attention to the relationships that we build. And then, as you can imagine, and as you probably know, being a speaker, the pandemic wasn't kind to people who stood up on live stages and spoke. And everybody had always said, oh, you should have multiple streams of income. You should be doing coaching. You should have a consulting thing. I was sort of a traditional keynote speaker. I gave a speech, I got a check, I went home, I went to the next gig, and it worked for 12 years until it didn't. And so during the pandemic, I also took on a job as the CEO of an organization called the Austin Technology Council, which is a 33-year-old organization that is sort of a chamber of commerce for tech companies in Austin, Texas. And I was sort of hired to rebuild it, and kind of reinvent the community, since I speak about community. And so now I do both. My speaking business is back, and I run this small local nonprofit.
That is cool. And so you find that because being a speaker, I know you're pulled in a lot of different directions. You got to travel. You're away, but you find that you want to. How do I phrase this? You're doing that because you want to keep doing the Austin job, or you still because of the pandemic you still want to have something there that's stable and secure? Because I can only imagine it's challenging having both a full time speaking business and we're operating as CEO of the Austin Council.
Yes, and you're actually probably that's a very insightful question that a lot of people don't pick up on. So, yeah, I mean, what happened is I got into this organization 3.5 years ago with this charge of reinventing it. And the deeper I got into it, the more I realized that there was going to be a long-term thing. So I'm 3 years into sort of a 5-year rebuild, and I don't want to walk away from it. I put in a lot of time. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears are into it, and the community is starting, to react right away. The new guy shows up, and they're like, "Man, whatever." So I want to continue what I'm doing, but at the same time, my real passion has been my speaking business. I wanted to do it for a decade before I got into it, and now that it's back, I mean, I'm not doing as many gigs as I did in 2019, but I make more money from speaking than I make from running a small nonprofit. So it is a careful balance that I have to make. The good news is I can do a lot of things remotely that I do. There are certain things I have to be in Austin because it's a face forward job. So I have to be out in the community. So there are certain times I can't travel, but usually I can do most of my meetings and dealing with sort of behind the scenes stuff from the road. So it doesn't really impact. If I'm giving a speech in Chicago, I fly to Chicago. I work all day from the hotel room. I have dinner with a friend. Next morning, I give my keynote. I work at the airport and fly home. So I don't even have to take a vacation day because I'm easily working 6 hours on the road. So it's a delicate balance. But for right now, I choose to do both.
That's cool. Now, and this is not at all what I anticipated this conversation going, but this made me think of something. And I don't know how you felt when you took that job, but I had a similar thing happen to me way back when in '08, '09, right? My speaking business, it was never super great at that point anyways, but then it was. And I came across this job. It was a good fit for my skill set. And they actually were flexible. It's like, we only need you 30 hours a week. You're paid by the hour. So, like, I could just tell them, hey, next week I'm going to be gone for 2 days. I'm like, all right, no problem. And the moment I took that job, it felt like such a defeat. I was conceding because I had to get a job. And it took me like 5 months, 6 months to realize you are currently in the sweetest position you could. You have a job you like, doing work you like. That's totally flexible. And I don't know if you experienced that, like when you first took the job, were you like, oh man, and then or was it immediate, like, are you more like a little bit enlightened than I am, where you're like, oh, this is like, I'm adopting this, and this is great.
No, it definitely was a rough time. And look, I'm a middle-aged guy in America. What I've discovered is maybe I self-identified a little bit too much as my career over the course of my life. I know I'm the only middle-aged guy in America who self-worth came from his job. So when the pandemic hit and it sort of wiped it out, and I kept throwing spaghetti against the wall trying to see what would stick. And it wasn't that I was earning no money, but I went from a solid executive level salary to about less than a quarter of that, or about a quarter of that. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, my youngest kid got into an Ivy League college.
Oof.
And I actually had friends who were like, well, she can't go to Dartmouth because your business is, the pandemic is winding down your business. And I thought, how do you tell a kid work for 18 years to get into one of the top, 10 schools in America? And oh, dad's having money trouble. You can't go.
Yeah.
So I just decided we'd find a way through it. And it took a couple of years before I took the job with the council. But I went through kind of around that time, a couple of years into the pandemic. I'll be super transparent with you. I went through sort of a mental health crisis. I mean, I went through sort of a little bit of a collapse,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't tell anybody about it at the time, but it was bad and all that. And so I sort of took the job and then found out that the organization needed more work, and I was kind of all alone. It wasn't a really large staff, and someone left. And it just got kind of too much for me. So no, it wasn't like, hey, look at this. It's all wine and roses. I'm going to go out and do this. It's been a bit of a struggle, but once I started being able to own up to the fact that, yeah, it all got too much for me. And I got over sort of the crisis part of the mental health problem.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is that while the job doesn't pay what it should or what I'm worth, it had insurance benefits. It gave me a base level. And so right away, I didn't have that understanding. But now I kind of feel like you did, that, hey, I've got the best of both worlds. I've got flexibility in my schedule, and, I'm able to do both. And I think that's something that, I'm trying to tell other people out there, that it's not a failure if you have your own business. If you go and work part-time somewhere, or you find another opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a failure. In fact, it's actually a victory that you're owning up to the fact that my job is to be able to support this family, and my job is to pay my mortgage, and make sure I'm saving for retirement and things like that. And so if you're a real entrepreneur, yeah, you're going to have some downturns, and the real entrepreneur gets scrappy, doesn't roll up in a ball and cry. So once I got over the roll up in the ball part, then it was all good.
Well, it's so funny because as we talked about beforehand, like I talk a lot about change and whatnot, and one of my main messages is like, when a change happens, is like, are you looking backwards saying, yeah, but why did this change happen, or yeah, but, or are you looking at the opportunity saying, yes, and here's what I can do. Ironically, as I feel so many of us speakers do at times, we need to take our own medicine. So in that instance, like, even though I teach this stuff, I found myself lamenting that I had to do this, and it wasn't until I could reframe my mindset to look at the opportunity and the positives, that I was able to find that opportunity. I think so many of us, when we're going through a change, are just like, we're just wishing it didn't happen.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I wish I had a time machine and I could cure the pandemic before it started, but I don't have that power. So,
Well, we all wish you could do that, Tom.
the change happened, and I'm able to say yes to this job and yes to, being a speaker. And, finding the balance is sometimes hard. I'll be super honest. This fall, I had a lot of keynotes,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of responsibility in the job, and I had a 2-week vacation. And all of it sort of became a perfect storm for 8 weeks. And I just had to say, it's okay. And I talked to the board and I said, look, we've got all this stuff going on here. I've got stuff going on here. And I've got a pre-scheduled vacation that's been on the books for 18 months. We're just going to have to get through it. And together, people picked up the slack. My board chair ran an event, which normally as a volunteer isn't what he does. And some other people attended some things in my stead while I was away on vacation. And then I just had to work really hard when I was, doing keynotes around the country during a very busy time for the organization. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did I get out the other side without, a mental health crisis or feeling like the world was on my shoulders? Yeah, I got through the other side.
Well, I think this is ties into something. Then I watch your TEDx talk, which is awesome. But at the end, one of the things you tie it back to is how, with the mental health crisis, is one of the things that you did that you were most proud of was simply asking for help, which it sounds like here you're able to do. And for people, everyone, we'll put a link to it. Just definitely watch your TEDx talk. But I'd love just to kind of hear you sort of talk a little bit about this idea about how hard it is for people to ask for help and how powerful it was for you when you finally kind of let yourself do that.
Yeah. And I'm really proud of that TEDx talk. I've given over 1,000 paid speeches, over 17 years. And I'm really proud of that number. I've worked really hard to be able to say, wow, I've actually earned a living, supported my family, did all this stuff with it. But I think that speech is the one I'm the most proud of. It's not what I talk about as a paid speaker per se, but I talked about the fact that, I embraced change as I got older, where maybe when I was younger, I was a little bit more. And then one of the stories I talk about taking up running at 50 years old. I talk about taking up stand-up comedy at 52 years old. But then I talk about going through kind of this mental health challenge. And it's not something I would have signed up for. But on the other side, like all these other things, jumping off tall things, on the other side of it, it's like, oh, I'm stronger because of it. And I think that's something we have to realize when we're going through change is, yeah, it sucks. It sucks to have the rug pulled out from under you. It sucks to have your career derailed. It sucks to feel like you're a failure. But if you can push through to the other side, and there might be some valleys. I mean, I wish I could not have had the mental health crisis, but my daughter said to me, Dad, I think you're more empathetic to other people's problems because of it. And God, that has hung in the back of my mind for a year since she said it to me, because one of the things you're not supposed to do with somebody who has serious depression is say, just think happy thoughts. That's like the wrong advice.
Yeah.
And I had someone in my life, and I didn't share it with a lot of people, but I had someone in my life who I shared it with. And they're like, I have bad days tomorrow. Why don't you try to get up and say, I'm going to have a good day? And I laughed because I knew that wasn't what you were supposed to say. So I just ignored the advice. But on the flip side, that might have been something I would have said to somebody going through it if I myself hadn't been through that. So I think we have to look at the hard parts of our journey as, as important as the good parts of our journey.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's funny, just for transparency, I think I was misdiagnosed with depression. I think I went for an ADD diagnosis and we tried that, but then he's like, I think you're depressed. So I was on an antidepressant for like 3 years. It wasn't severe for me. But when I was like talking with some people, I had a similar experience where like one of the friends I had who I shared this with was like a mastermind person, and she's like, "Oh yeah, well yeah, we all have like parts of our job we don't want to do." I'm like, "Yeah, I just told you I was diagnosed with depression. That's not where." So I tell you, but you're right. Like I've probably been on the other end of that myself. So all our experience shape us. Now you mentioned something in there I want to talk about, but before I get too side railed, I definitely want to talk about the speaking business side of your life. Yeah. Which it's about human interaction and connection. I think the umbrella term, at least before, would have been networking. I don't know if you've kind of brought in that, if that's still what you talk about. So what is your, I guess, why are people hiring you? Why are they like, we need Thom Singer to come in and talk about XYZ because we're dealing with ABC?
Absolutely. Well, going back to when I went full-time in the business, or even before when I was doing it part-time, I never used the term networking because it has preconceived notions. There are people who think it's a fluffy topic. There are people who think they know how to do it, even though they repel everybody they meet. There are people who think it's the softest of the soft skills. So I don't use the term. I don't hate the term. I don't think it's a bad term, but I don't use it like in my marketing or from the stage because there are people in the audience who will roll their eyes. I learned that early on. So I've always called it human connection. And then that sort of developed into human interaction. And one of the reasons for that is a couple of years ago, I changed the title of the speech to Human Interaction, HI, in an AI-driven world. And I will tell you that that's when my business took back off, is that title, essentially tied into the hottest topic out there, which is AI. And yet I'm not an AI speaker, but because I work for the technology organization, I interview AI leaders in Texas. I have lunch with them, or I'm on a panel with them, or all this. I'm meeting people all the time. So I understand and I know what's happening. And we're about to go through some major disruptions in our society because of AI. If they figure out quantum computing, fasten your seatbelt, because those two things combined, it's just going to get bigger. So I understand all that. But I believe the secret weapon is the relationships that you build. And Harvey Mackay, who was, back when you and I got started in the speaking business, he was one of the hottest authors and speakers out there. He wrote a book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And it was a book about networking. And basically, I always joked, and I know Harvey, I always joked that book could have been 400 blank pages because the title itself says everything. Yep. Dig your well before you're thirsty. And nowadays, what's happening is, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of younger people didn't do this. People think, oh, well, if I have likes, links, shares, and follows on LinkedIn and Twitter and everything else, then they're part of my network. And the reality is that you have to cultivate relationships and you have to be there willing to help other people without keeping score. So I've been talking about this now for over 20 years, and it's suddenly becoming a very hot topic again. 2008, 2009, 10, and 11, when I started, it was a super hot topic because of the recession.
Yep.
Well, now we have this documented epidemic of loneliness and disconnection in our society. And so the topic is becoming really hot again. And that's why my speaking business has bounced back. So I really believe, like I said, I don't use the term networking, but I don't have a problem with it. It's the connections you build along the way that lead you to opportunities. And sometimes they're small, sometimes they're big, sometimes you don't even know they're happened. But I mean, you and I met 17 years ago, and here I am on your podcast. Somebody could be listening to the podcast who's like, I need to know more about this guy. And they hire me, or they bring me an opportunity, or we become friends, or whatever. That all goes back to that meeting you 17 years ago. So I really believe that that matters, and that you can't discredit people. You can't prejudge. Well, Avish talks about improv tools in business. I mean, how important is that to me? Somebody could discredit that, like they might the networking term. Well, that's stupid, because you don't know how powerful that person is or what opportunity they're going to bring you and everything else. So I really try to teach people that while you can't be friends with everybody, don't prejudge people, and look at their successes as partially, in some way, your own successes. If people in your network do well and you help them, take a little pride in that.
Yeah, well, number one, it's funny about the Harvey McKay thing, because literally in real time right now, just yesterday, I interviewed someone for my podcast. Exact same topic came up. I brought up Harvey McKay with the exact phrase. And it is right. And she said the same thing, right? Right now, because so many people are like losing work and the economy, and everyone's starting now versus continuing.
So that's exactly right. People right now, and it's funny because there's a young speaker who thinks he invented this idea of building relationships, who's just getting started, who talked to me, and I'm like, yeah, I've been talking about this for 20 years. But you have to be doing it now, because if we do have an economic upheaval, or if just individuals get laid off, or if society gets disrupted, your opportunities are going to be there. And you can't show up at a networking event like the Austin Technology Council. If you're a programmer, and you show up and you're looking for a tech job, you've never been, you don't know anybody. You can't show up with a stack of resumes and walk around going, hey, I'm looking for a job, because nobody gives a damn.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is be part of the community, help other people show up, and maybe one of those people will be there for you. There's no guarantees. It's not like everybody asks me, what's the secret sauce? I do a lot of training for lawyers on how to get more business. And so they'll be like, well, what's the minimum series of things I have to do in the community to get more business in my book? And I'm like, well, I don't know. There's not like a formula, like you go to this event, you go to that event, you send a handwritten note, you take somebody to lunch, and they give you a deal. It doesn't work that way. But I tell everybody, look, networking is not a verb. It's a lifestyle choice. Mm-hmm. And so you don't go, it's not a verb. You don't go networking. You have to live this idea of, I care about people, and I look for reasons to say yes, and maybe say yes and. But there's so many people, and in our business, who go like, oh, someone asked me to do this thing, but I didn't see the value in it for me, so I didn't do it. Well, I actually do the opposite. Instead of looking for reasons to say no to trying things, I look for reasons to say yes. Mm-hmm. Can't say yes to everything, but I look for a reason to say yes. Somebody wants to go to lunch, I look for a reason to figure it out. Whatever it is, there's a conference that might be interesting to attend. I look for a reason to be able to be there, because you don't know when you do those yeses, where it's going to lead you to that person. Every opportunity that I've ever had in my life has come from a person. And so therefore, cultivating relationships with people, it's invaluable.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because from what I've known about you, maybe it's just because of your topic, I've always sort of assumed you're more of an outgoing extrovert. I assume many people in your audiences would identify as shy or introverted, present company included. So what is your sort of advice or process to, because some people can just walk into a room and walk up to someone they don't know and start the conversation, and others will just rather, kind of stare at their drink or look at their phone the whole time. So what's sort of your advice or process for how those people can get going with it?
And you're right. I am an extrovert, and the extrovert introvert thing, it's not that they don't like people. My wife is a pretty serious introvert. Mm-hmm. She loves people one at a time, two at a time, three at a time, not 500 at a time. I walk into a room of 500 people and I walk around and talk to people. I get energized for the next day. I'm kind of on top of the world. Introverts will do that same thing, and they need to go to the spa the next day and just put headphones on for like 6 hours. So introverts get their energy from a little downtime, some solitude. Extroverts get it from there, but it's not about how you build relationships. That has nothing to do with if you like people or if you can build relationships. And here's the secret for people like you and other introverts. And I speak a lot to lawyers, bankers, accountants, and engineers. That is a huge portion of my speaking business.
Yeah.
And those people are going to typically trend a little bit more to that introverted, left brainy side of things. And so The secret is that I'm going to tell you this. Now listen close. Introverts are better networkers and relationship builders in business. And people always look at me like, what? No, the extrovert's the life of the party. Our society has done a disservice. We celebrate the extrovert. We celebrate the person who's the life of the party, who can stand up and give the toast, the person who walks around and introduces everybody. We celebrate that person. But the truth is that those who are more introverted are better at it, because when two people meet, the introvert doesn't want to talk about himself, doesn't want to take over the conversation. So they're going to do two things. They're going to ask more questions and they're going to listen. And those are the two ways that you build real serious relationships. So as an extrovert, I still have to work on that. It's really easy if someone gives me a runway. It's really easy for me, as I'm doing right now. It's easy for me to talk for a 5-minute answer. But if you're going to build relationships, you need to get the other person to talk. And they've actually done surveys where the person who talks the most, the other person doesn't like them as much. The person who talks the least, the other person loves them. And so what you want to do is, you don't have to memorize an elevator pitch about yourself. I mean, you should know how to talk about yourself when the time comes, but you should memorize 3 or 4 questions that when you're in that setting gets other people to open up. And when you do that, they're going to like you more because they get to talk about themselves, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert. And you're going to get the information. I make the joke that, when an introvert is listening, they're thinking about, how can I connect that dot to somebody I know, or what can I ask them next? When an extrovert is listening, they're thinking, what can I say when it's my turn?
Yeah.
So that's why I think introverts have, if they embrace it, and society hasn't let introverts embrace it, if they embrace it, they're better at building real relationships. And it's not a numbers game. It's about finding the right people.
So obviously, dig your well before you're thirsty. Ideally, everyone would have started 5 years ago. But as you so astutely pointed out, there's no time machine. So let's say someone's like, all right, I want to start building the human connection now. What's the best way for them to get started? Is it like to find a networking meeting, like a chamber of commerce or professional association, or is there how would you advise someone to sort of start digging their well if they're sort of brand new to this?
So it really depends on who they are, kind of what their personality and likes are, and then what do they do for a living? Why do they need to have this, human interaction, connections? Why do they need to build a brand and a reputation, and why do they need that circle of influence? So, if you're a sales guy, it's different than if you're, a tech programmer who might need a new job in a couple of years. So there's different reasons. So figure out who you are, what you do, and why you're doing it, and who you want to know, right? So you need to know what type of people do I need to get to know. Then you look either in your industry or in your local community for where are the groups that meet. So some of these might be online, some of them are in person, some of them, if they're an industry, you go to the conference. I just looking at our industry of speakers, I'm amazed at how many people who aren't famous. I mean, famous people have a different thing in the speaker world, but how many people who don't go to the National Speakers Association? And one woman told me, I don't want to go where my competitors are. I just want to go where there's a room full of meeting planners. And I'm like, if you do that, it's like you're a wolf who hasn't eaten in a month, and they're people with a pork chop around their neck, right? And you just want to go and get that pork chop. I always say the secret to becoming a professional speaker is having a lot of speaker friends.
Yep.
And the way you do that is you get around them. Well, that's why you go to the conferences that a group like the National Speakers Association puts on. If I was a plumber, I'd be an active member of the National Plumbers Association. If I was a locksmith, I'd be an active member of the National Locksmith Association, because you build friendships with people. They're not your competitors. I mean, I've known you for 17 years. I don't think I've ever been down to the final 2 with you. And in fact, there's only one speaker I ever competed with more than about 3 times in 1,000 speeches where who else are you talking to? I'm talking to this person. Well, that person actually, she lost a deal to me. And so she called me and said, I want to know who you are. And we're great friends. I had dinner with her recently. So your competitors aren't your enemies. They're actually a great source of opportunities because success leaves clues. So get around people who are successfully in your spot. So that'd be my first thing, is identify 2 or 3 groups locally and nationally that you can participate in. And then you have to show up at these events, and then you have to participate. So if they have an online forum, just go in and compliment people. You don't have to be the know-it-all. Just go in and compliment, oh, that's good advice, or something like that, so that people see your names. Because meeting someone once doesn't make them part of your network. Do you know what meeting someone once makes them?
I don't know.
Many people say an acquaintance. I don't even think it's that.
I was going to say an acquaintance, yeah.
Yeah. But meeting someone once makes them someone you have met once.
Okay.
And there is a huge difference between someone you've met once and someone who you have cultivated or are cultivating a long-term and mutually beneficial relationship with. So if you go into meeting people and realize I have to be around them 7 to 10 times, not before we're friends, but before they even notice I exist.
Yeah.
Then you realize it's going to take you a couple of years in each of these organizations just to get noticed that you exist.
Yeah, it's funny, and I've always sort of hated networking or using it as a marketing tool, and I'm now, again, I didn't dig my well before I was thirsty, so now I'm like, all right, and I mean, you know Michael Goldberg. I don't know if you're friends with him or not, but he's a good buddy of mine, and so he's a big networking guy, so he's been bringing me to his networking events and whatnot, and it's been good. But even this conversation is a reminder of like, oh yeah, it's more of a, and it is so many times just. I call this your persistent yes, but. It's like the thing your little voice keeps telling you should do it, but your logical brain's like, yeah, but. And I think networking and then human connection may be mine kind of next little yes, but I need to address.
Well, and again, just using the speaker business as the thing, there's a lot of people who are great at smiling and dialing. They pick up the phone and they make 5 calls a day, 7 days a week. Good, and they're all working a lot. And I admire that. I'm a little more scatterbrained, so it's like I want to do that. I have a list I should be pinging all the time, and I do it sporadically because I'm honest about who I am. I know myself. However, most of my business has come from word of mouth, and that is meeting planners who've seen me speak somewhere. It's people's wives or husbands who saw me speak somewhere, and their husband or wife is in charge of their corporate conference.
Yep.
Comes from other speakers. Back before the pandemic, and my business is still growing back. It's not, I don't have data to really show anything because it's been a little sporadic the last couple of years. But before the pandemic, 20% of my business came from referrals from other speakers in NSA. And, that was a seismic part of my business for a decade. Yeah, so having those relationships and letting people know who you are and what you talk about and why you do it well, that's part of it. If you're the best kept secret in your industry, no matter what industry you're in, you're going to have hungry kids. You can't be the best kept secret. And one of the ways to not be the best kept secret, if you're not famous or you're not the leader in your industry, is be someone who shows up and supports and participates and is a cheerleader for the whole industry, because people will notice that.
Yeah, and for me, I find the more I get involved, and part of that's probably the shyness thing and like needing like permission, but it's like getting on the board or joining a committee. Yes. Suddenly, like totally. I meet people deeper. I have a reason to be there, and like a lot of those things go away. And it's a good reminder that this is something we all need to do. So let's I do want to pivot a little bit because there's definitely something I wanted to make sure we had a chance to talk about, and you touched upon it real briefly, and that is that at the age of 52, you just decided to start doing stand-up comedy. And I remember seeing your social media posts about starting. I'm like, oh, that's great. You're taking a stand-up class. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I did, and seeing now, no, I hit my 100th gig. And I think at your TEDx talk, you said you did 160. So just take us back to the beginning of that. Like what was the impetus for that? And what was it like just starting to do stand-up?
So I got to take you farther back. When I was 16 years old, I grew up in Los Angeles. You only had to be 16 to get into the local comedy club in Pasadena, California. It's one of the grand old famous comedy clubs that you hear about. It's called the Ice House. It's still there in Pasadena. And you only had to be 16. So my friends and I, we would go, or it was a great place to go on a date with your girlfriend in high school. It was still a 2-drink minimum. You couldn't order drinks, but you'd get a couple Coca-Colas or a virgin strawberry daiquiri with a big umbrella in it or something, Hawaiian punch for everybody. But I would at the end, they'd say, oh, on Thursday night or whatever night it was, we have an open mic night here if you want to try it. And I would, on the drive back to the town next door where we lived, I would be like, oh, I want to go do open mic night. I want to go do open mic night. And I never did it. And I also wanted to be like an actor, like a sitcom actor when I was a kid. And I grew up in LA and I never even tried. I didn't know anybody in the business. I never did anything with it. It just got filed away. So I think that's one of the reasons I became a speaker, is it gave me that chance to be on stage. And I think that's why I liked it. But anyway, fast forward to 2018, and I'd made a new friend through NSA, a guy named Drew Tarvin, who you know. And he's an improv guy and a stand-up guy, and he has a TED Talk that's been watched like 10 million times on humor in the workplace.
He's also a previous podcast guest.
And he's been a guest on this podcast, which, that's awesome. So anyway, I was going to be in New York. At the time, he lived in New York. And I called him and said, let's go out and get a drink while I'm there. And he said, he said that A, he's not a big drinker. And he goes, 2, the night you're here, I'm going to open mic night. Why don't you come with me? And I vividly remember saying, oh my God, that'd be so much fun. I would love to watch you work on new material. And he says, Thom, that's not what I'm inviting you to do. I'm inviting you to write a 5-minute set. And this is like 2 weeks out.
Wow.
Write a 5-minute set. And, everybody gets on, you put your name in, they draw names at this one, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, Drew, that ship sailed. He goes, didn't you tell me when you were 16, you used to tell your friends, oh, I want to do open mic night. When you were in college, you used to go to comedy and you'd be like, I want to do that. And he goes, and one of the things I talk about in my speeches is try new things and put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. And he literally goes, aren't you the guy who talks about try new things? And I remember saying to him, God, Drew, throwing my own content back in my face, I'll do it. So I worked on it and I wrote it. And then I met him for dinner beforehand and he looked at my script. I read it to him and he goes, did you just take the funny parts out of your speech? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, this is speech humor. Let's get some punchlines. So he helped me come up with some punchlines like an hour before the show.
Wow.
And I got up and I did it. And here's the thing. I wasn't horrible. I had really good stage presence because I'd been at a microphone a lot of time. One of the comics came up and said, was that really your first time? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's the best first time I've ever seen at a comedy club. And I said, well, I'm a professional speaker. And the guy goes, oh, like he totally blew it. He was giving me this compliment. He goes, you really weren't that funny, So, and Drew told me, he goes, look, we could teach you to be funnier, but the stage presence goes a long way. So you have a leg up. So I got home to Austin and my wife said, how was the stand-up? And I said, it was interesting. I think I could learn a lot. I'm going to do 100 open mic nights. And I remember we had a high school kid at the time. She said, you can't be going out at night. You're already on the road. At the time I was on the road 100 nights a year. She goes, you can't go out on like a Tuesday night. You got to be here, spend some time, have dinner with Kate and stuff. She's only gonna be here for 2 more years. You got to do that. And I said, I'll do it on the road. And so when I would be in like Chicago, I would go online. I'd Google Wednesday night, open mic night, Chicago.
Oh, that's so
Phoenix,
interesting.
Los Angeles, San Diego, Washington, D.C. There wasn't always one. Kansas City only had 2 open mic nights a week, and they weren't the nights I was there twice. So I'd find it. And then, I always said I would have never been able to do this if Uber hadn't been invented, because some of these were in bars that were a little remote. Mm-hmm. And so I could have taken a taxi to get there from downtown, but how would I ever get back? So because of Uber, I was able to do it. And when the pandemic hit, I had done 97 open mic nights. So my goal was do 100. I wasn't going to become a professional comic. I'm still not going to. And so the pandemic, I didn't do it for a year. I tried some online ones. I didn't count those. I didn't like them. Mm-hmm. So Austin opened up a year later. Texas was, one of the first states to be fully open. So open mic nights started again about, 14 months later. And so I was like, I got to go do these 3. And then I just kept doing it. And this year I didn't do very many because I had a lot of work and a lot of travel.
Sure.
But I'm at 231 open mic nights, and I've been a featured comic in 12 shows where I've been paid. And by paid, I mean like $25, $50. But like my brother said, that's more than I've been paid. He goes, so I'll call you a professional. But I bring that up because I keep doing it. I've gotten back into it. I'm taking a class right now and stuff. But it's made me a better speaker. It's made me better at other things I do because I'm more playful and I'm more confident. Because, you've done this. You get up and give a speech and it's not your best day. It's still good. People still say, oh, I learned something. People still take some notes. Mm-hmm. If you're off at an open mic night or even in a show, people don't laugh. The other night I got back up after several months of not doing it. And I used a piece of work that my biggest laugh, my best joke. And I said the punchline and there was like 40 people in the audience and like nobody really laughed. And I was like, what? I literally go, wow, that's my best joke. Nobody laughed. But because that's happened to me, I'm better in other situations in business where things aren't going my way. So it's made me more resilient, more playful, and more confident.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm obviously an improv guy, and people think, oh, improv and stand-up, they're diametrically opposed. And I've done stand-up as well, and I think everyone should take improv for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
I think stand-up is the purest form of public speaking there is, because literally, like you said, there's no point, right? Everyone always jokes like, oh, you don't tell jokes as a speaker, you tell a story. You tell a funny story, because then if people don't laugh, you still told a story, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
With jokes, if it doesn't work, It bombs. And it's
But if you have a funny story, if you can deliver it, not as a bit, but if you can deliver a funny story, you'll get booked again. Because if the audience, like I have a couple spots in my keynote where I get really good laughs, and I know that's why I get referrals, because people, that's what they remember. But you're right that people, like I tell people, oh, I started doing stand. I tell other speakers, started doing stand up, and they go, oh yeah, I did improv. And I'm like, I'm not dissing improv. Improv's a hard thing and it's a good thing. And boy, you learn to think on your feet like nobody's business, but they're not the same thing.
no.
And I think stand up is just the hardest use of the spoken word that exists. And
Well, when you said 5 minutes 2 weeks out, I'm like, well, I've done stand up before. I mean, I think one time I and this is probably even on the conservative side, I think 1 to 2 hours per minute was about like the effort I put in for like this one set I did. So 2 weeks out to be like, oh, just do 5 minutes if you've got nothing prepared, like that's a lot to get ready for.
And like I said, I mean, I'll be honest, I skate on the fact that I have stage presence sometimes. You know, I can get up and not be as funny as I could be, but it's not crickets, because I can keep an audience engaged, but I'm trying to learn to be funnier, right? I'm learning to write tags. I'm learning to do more callbacks. But that actually helps me, like in a business setting. I was at a kind of an important business meeting on the other side of my life. And at the end of the meeting, I did sort of it wasn't a joke, but I did a kind of funny callback to something that started the meeting, and everybody laughed. And it sort of put a bow around the whole meeting. And someone said to me later, they go, were you thinking of that the whole time? And I'm like, nope. I just saw it as a perfect callback that was going to make the meeting kind of end on a good note. And I'm like, I'm not sitting there writing bits while we're talking about, planning for the next quarter.
Yeah, it's once your mind starts working that way, though, and it is such a useful, even if you're not a humorist, it's such a useful tool in your toolbox. So why are you still doing the open mics now? Is it just because you enjoy it, or is it a goal, or is it still something you think is going to help your speaking?
Probably all of the above. I'd like to get good at it. I'm okay at it. Like I've been in like 12 shows, but you've been to comedy shows. The first speaker gets like 7 or 8 minutes. The next one gets like 15, and then the headliner gets a half hour. I've always been the first one. I'm good enough to open a show and make you go, okay, this is going to be a fun night. But I would like to get good enough that I could, do the headlining stuff. I don't want to be a touring comic. I mean, I'm too old, to go down that path. But I'd like anything. If you're doing it, I want to be better at it. And so I'm taking a class right now, and I really like the instructor. He's written for major sitcoms and for major comedians, and lived in LA for most of his career. And he's teaching this class, and he sees right through my bullshit. He sees through, he literally told me, he goes, you're hiding behind your skill as a speaker. And I was like, and that was the first time he saw me. And I'm like, wow, like he was right. And I knew he was right. And because one guy in the class was like, oh, he was so good. And he was like, no, he wasn't. He's hiding behind his personality. And so I see that. So I want to peel back that onion and be able to do it. And I also think that what I'm trying to do working with this guy will make me a better speaker in a different way as well. Because if I can be more raw, if I can just let more of, it's less performance and more me out.
Wow, well, that's great. And, a few other things I could ask about, but I think that's kind of a really perfect statement to sort of move towards wrapping things up on. I am going to finish up here in just a few minutes. But for people who want to learn more about you, whether it's your speaking work or the Austin Council or stand-up or whatever, what are the best ways they should connect with you, find out about you, learn more about you?
So LinkedIn's probably the best tool out there for connecting with people in a business type setting. I have an Instagram that I play with, but it's nothing. No one's going to say like, wow, Tom's Instagram is really good. But then my website is just thomsinger.com. I spell Tom Thom. So it's THOMSINGER.com. But a little secret, when the internet first came out, I bought thomsinger.com, TOMSINGER.com, because I figured someday someone's just going to spell it wrong. So I redirect.
Very smart.
So as long as you get Tom somewhat close to one or the other way, then you're going to find me.
All right, fantastic. And we will put those links in the show notes as well. And the one thing we didn't even mention, but I'll put in the show notes for people, is you also have a podcast, which you've had for years, and you sort of shifted the focus. But why don't you just do a quick plug for that? Just tell us about that.
And, I do so many different things. I'm trying to relaunch it. It's been kind of dormant again for the last year or so because I've been sort of pulled in so many directions, but it originally was called Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. And I interviewed all my friends who were entrepreneurs about cool things they were doing. It's now called Making Waves at the C level, like C is in the letter C level, like CEO, CFO. And I interview business leaders about how they shake things up in their company. So it's I've been doing it since 2014. So there's close to 800 episodes, but it's been a little quiet lately.
Oh, no, I didn't realize that, but but I think that for me it was the Cool Thing Entrepreneurs Do. I was like a very regular listener. The C level, I understood why you made the shift. It became a little less relevant for me, so I didn't realize it had gone dormant. But you can go back and get all.
Yeah, they're all there, and the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. You know, what was interesting about that show is I started it before all the celebrities had podcasts. Mm-hmm. So it was for the first 2 years, like 2014, 15, maybe even 16. It was like a top 50 business podcast on Apple Podcasts when the only way you got podcasts was Apple was like 90% of the business. So it was a wide, and it spun off a lot of speaking business. Even though I didn't speak on entrepreneurship, people who listened to it, I would mention being a speaker and they'd have an event and they'd look into me. I was picking up like 5 gigs a year from the podcast.
That's awesome.
Until like 2016, 17, all the celebrities got in and I disappeared.
Got it. All right, well, go check that out. We'll put the links to everything in there. So, Tom, one final question. I like to end all my podcasts this way. I talk about the idea of saying yes and instead of yes but, because I honestly believe the world would be a better place if everyone just started with a default mindset of yes and instead of yes but. So what is one small thing that you believe that if everyone did, it would make the world a better place?
I think if everybody decided that they were going to go out and help somebody else, promote somebody else, it would make the world a better place. You know, social media has become look at me media. And it's very rare you see people, you know, say, hey, check out Avish. He's doing amazing things. And if more people at least took one day a week where they used all their social media to promote someone else, the world would be a better place.
Ooh, I love that answer. And I'm going to start doing that myself this week. So
I do a thing on Saturday called Cool Things My Friends Do, which is sort of the next version of Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. And every Saturday on LinkedIn, I make a post. It's somebody who released a book. It's an entrepreneur in Austin who, you know, got funding. It's somebody wins, you know, gets put in the Hall of Fame in their industry, whatever it is. But the great part about it, it means all week I have to be paying attention to what people I know have done. And sometimes if I'm busy, I get to Saturday and I'm like, oh no. And I have to go back through everybody's social media and look for something that's cool enough to share. But it's a great exercise to make me pay attention to other people.
I love that. I think everyone should definitely do that. Tom, thank you very much. This was fantastic. Everyone be sure to check out all of Tom's links, check out his website, connect with him on LinkedIn. Tom, thank you very much. This was great, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
I look forward to it.